Welcome to Vet Talk. I'm Dr. Nathan. I'm looking forward to this episode because it's going to be a deep dive on how the community works together, or maybe doesn't work together. I'll let you decide at the end of the episode. This episode is meant to weave a story together to show incidents in my local community so that you might be able to compare it to your community and understand why or why not care is delivered to animals in a community. I have a bias with this episode because these events include me, but I hope you can see through that bias and that I can discuss it in a way that allows you to see the wheels in motion and perhaps be able to improve the situation, whether it's your community or, if you're local, my community. These issues I discuss are challenges in cattle and large animal medicine for client and veterinarian. If we really want to fix the problems in large animal medicine, we need educated action from open conversations. If you want more background into my cattle experience, I have a plethora of episodes you can listen to on my YouTube channel. Clinic Changes episodes will take you through some of my specific changes in the clinic and how I have adapted to survive as a business providing care to large animals. Episodes like Commissioner Letter, Cattle Economics Part 1 and Part 2, or To Vet School or Not would be good ones. Cattle prolapses, epidemiology, and veterinary shortages are other good episodes. And one of my personal favorites, for the title alone, because I think I'm so clever, Obama Cow Care. Take a listen to those, but I'll try to fill you in on everything that is pertinent as we go so you can follow everything if you haven't listened to those episodes yet. I think we need to first start with the state of my business regarding large animal medicine. I graduated in 2010 and the vet business wasn't that great. I couldn't find a job, so I started my own business. My goal was to focus on horses, but I quickly expanded into any large animal and small animals. Anything to put food on my table. Being a large animal veterinarian didn't seem too special at that point because I counted about 18 large animal vets in the region. Now, depending on how you count, we may be down to 6. Though I will admit that depends on how you divide the region and how you count people who moonlight. And I'm including people who work on horses here. If we talk about those that see cattle, that number decreases even more. Either way, the numbers have greatly decreased, which show there is an overall lack of need, not a lack of vets. With these hurting numbers, where is my large animal practice? Not in a great state. Well, I enjoy working on large animals, and I think my staff and I provide excellent service, but numbers are shrinking while the small animals keep coming. For the large animal side of my clinic, I'm going to focus these discussions on cattle, but when we talk about large animals for a mixed animal practitioner, we are talking about more than cattle. We're talking about horses and goats and sheep and pigs, llamas and alpacas. Or I can divide it into food animals and horses. All of these are shrinking. It's not that we as vets are not offering services, it is that people aren't using us. And maybe I'm just a disagreeable person, but I think there is more to it than that. While we will touch on points of why there are these changes, I've touched on that in other episodes in more detail. Today, I wanted to more show the finances that pushed me to make the decisions I did with my business, especially regarding cattle. My decisions are directly based on people's usage. I started my practice in 2010, and by 2013, I purchased from a local mixed animal veterinary practice, Grants Lick Veterinary Hospital, the large animal portion of their business. That brought my cattle to about 10% of my total business. 2013 is when I really was able to start tracking numbers as I upgraded my computer software that year. So I want to show two bits of information. This spreadsheet here shows my gross income and percent of total business regarding cattle. The last row is my overall business percent growth each year. One of my mentors told me that anything under 20% of your total business you can do without. Independently, I had come to anything under 10% of my business I could do without. Most business people would get rid of their cattle business, much as Grant Slick Vet Hospital had struggled with and decided to do in 2013. From conversations with previous owners of that clinic, I know they had struggled with that decision for at least a decade before actually ending their large animal services by selling to me. For me, with my 10% rule, cattle were on the verge. It was on the services worth keeping, but just barely. I was a young business and still growing, so I kept it. For reference going forward, excluding 2025 with Trump in office, my business would grow anywhere from 9 to 25% each year. My highest growth in 2017 was 25% growth. In general, I grow all aspects of my business, and I'm consistent in doing so. Trump's economy of 2025, I am seeing about 1% growth, and I expect it to be pretty much flatlined to zero by the end of the year. All this is not congratulatory to me. It's mostly my prayers and good help that have helped me do as well as I have. But I do feel like I can say my business principles tend to cause growth. Yet despite that, like the decreasing number of large animal vets in the region, so falls my cattle numbers. At first I thought cattle seemed to grow with me, holding around 10% of my business and then shooting up to 13.5% of my business in 2018. 2018 was also my best year for cattle, where I grossed $34,000 of business from cattle. Remember that number for later in the episode. But anyway, I kept working on cattle. I was working like crazy, running out to cattle at a moment's notice, seeing emergencies and trying to prepare people for the VFDs by doing surveys, educating people, and putting out podcast information, as well as working on giving people the ability to order products from myself. My biggest thing was I noticed the region seemed to have a lot of incurable diseases such as Johne's and bovine leukemia virus. I focused on pushing people to test for this, as well as pushing for testing for a new disease in the area called anaplasma. So what happened in 2019? Well, I was busy. I was in my truck running around like crazy. Since 2010, I had always planned on getting a brick and mortar building. In my grand plan, I would get that in 2020, but things were running early. I was getting more appointments than I could drive to in a day. My horse and cattle clients were practically begging for me to work on small animals, and I needed a better retirement plan than a truck and a prayer. I needed the ability to see more people. So I moved into and began remodeling a building. This was great because, as you can see, my growth rate in 2018 was plateauing, and I was reaching not market saturation, but the extent of my ability to get to all the appointments in the day. All my clients needed me the ability to see more appointments. And the answer to that was a clinic where I could still do farm calls, but I could also see multiple appointments at the office. To me, my office was the perfect answer. I would have something to sell for retirement. I could and did see more appointments and was able to offer more services, better services, while expanding into small animal as my large animal clients had asked me to. But what happened in 2019? My cattle gross numbers dropped to 8%, the lowest yet on record for me. I had a lot of people say I moved into my office and didn't want to work on cattle anymore. I could and did tell people that was not the case. But here's something I didn't tell you about those numbers. I moved into my building in October of 2019. Most of my cattle work is done well before that in the spring. My cattle numbers were dropping before my building. But why? It took me years to determine this, but it was that I was busy and cattle clients don't use vets much. Cattle clients wanted an appointment when they wanted it and they couldn't wait. When my schedule was booked up and I couldn't schedule them an appointment within 24 hours, they didn't want to use me. This is a trend that will grow into a problem in cattle, and I see expanding into horses. 2020 only increased this trend where cattle became 4% of my services. Now, who knows with that year? It was the pandemic. But I, like all vets, could be booked out 2 months for regular appointments, and we struggled to get emergency appointments in, especially farm calls, which is what most cattle calls were. It was not for lack of trying, for certain, but surviving 2020 was something we were lucky to be able to do. 2021 for me was more stable overall, but we dropped another 1% on the cattle side. In 2021, I instituted my biggest change to cattle medicine. I instituted a rule because we were so backed up in 2020 that cattle clients had to be active clients. Farm calls took me away from the office. We had more complaints that I was out fixing a prolapsed cow than I could count. And mind you, these complaints were from horse and cattle clients who were wanting their dog seen. And as we will discuss later, these cattle appointments are not regular clients. I needed time to see my patients, and I couldn't accept new cattle clients. That being said, all cattle clients had to do was to have any animal seen within the year, and we would still serve them. As a courtesy to clients, if you have a horse, a cat, a dog, a guinea pig in our system for you and are an active client, we would work on your cattle. Or if you had a herd and had used us annually for the herd, we would continue to work on your cattle. We did push to see calves at the office because it was more economically feasible for both the money conscious producer and vet hospital. But any cow over dog size, we still made farm calls to. For small ruminants, we still made farm calls, but taking away parasites, most of our appointments are blocked goats and dystocias in goats, which we started requiring to be hauled to the clinic because I noted I had better outcomes with tables and lights and better anesthetics at the clinic. So these cases did better when I made people bring them in. Still, the active client rule made cattle drop, which I expected. However, my appointment schedule stabilized and the clients I were keeping were more regular and more likely to do what I asked them to. Cattle dropped down to 1.4% of my business. The next thing that affected cattle occurred in 2023. I decided to stop seeing after-hour emergencies. This was challenging as that's what people expect of large animal vets. But I just felt it foolish. Grand Slick Veterinary Hospital, the clinic I mentioned buying their large animal practice, they had 7 to 9 vets on their staff, depending on the year of operation, and now only saw small animals. They stopped seeing after-hour emergencies with 7 to 9 vets. Another hospital in Lexington, who had multiple vets whom I sent my horse emergencies to, stopped seeing after-hour emergencies. Why was I, a single practitioner, on call 24/7 when larger hospitals were not offering those services? So I stopped answering the phone after hours, and my numbers only went up. I saw more emergencies. I just saw them more effectively during the day. And I did still go out at night. You just had to call before we turned the phones off. It's hard to complain when I got more sleep and helped more patients. Work smarter, not harder. You'll notice cattle numbers stayed consistent in 2022, 23, and 24, about $7,000 gross, or just a little over 1% of my business. I will also say another factor through all of this is that prices in my business were going up just like every other business in the country. This, however, hit producers the hardest, and I couldn't offer them different prices for their dog versus their cow. An emergency appointment was an emergency appointment, and emergencies are what cattle farmers called for. But still, what's going on with cattle? I questioned if I did the right thing for the community. However, I had a recent conversation with a retired veterinarian who had worked cattle in the area. He affirmed everything I did was correct and logical in his mind. He summarized saying cattle, when he practiced, were 10% of his clients and 80% of the problems. They could not haul their animals. They rarely called, and when they did, they needed you in an emergency, very likely after hours. While that made me feel better, I wanted more numbers, so my practice manager dug deeper. Here's some more numbers. In all my years of business, I have 361 cattle herds in my books. The average time in my 15 years of business that I would see these herds is 3.73 times. 2% of my cattle herd owners have died that I know of. Of all those calls, 40% of those herds I saw only once in 15 years. Do cattle producers really need a vet if they only need a vet once every 15 years? 20% of those people I saw 2 times. I only saw 10% 3 times. That means only about 30% of my cattle clients used me 4 times or more in 15 years. Only 8% or 28 clients used me more than 10 times in 15 years. So 28 clients only use me every year and a half. Of that 8%, 11 of those herds have not used me since 2020. I've been telling people cattle clients only use me about every 2 to 3 years, but I think I was mistaken with those numbers. 40% only call a vet every 15 years. Another 20% only need a vet every 7 years. And remember, during this time, large animal vets have been leaving the profession, and owners have less options in who they use in my region the longer I practice. So I'm hoping to make money on 40% of the region's cattle herd. Because really, if you need me every 7 years, I just don't care if I can't serve you. I'm sorry I can't run a business making a decision on someone like that. And to be fair, I don't know that small animal medicine is much better, but there's more small animal appointments, making it not as much of a problem if I don't see them again for years. I'm not enough of a statistician to do the math, but my guess is the average cattle client needs a vet every 5 to 7 years. And I think I'm being generous with that guess. We double-checked this by seeing how many cattle clients used us again in the following years. I asked a cattle client the other day, who brings his dogs to me, why I hadn't seen his cows in a few years. He said when the veterinary feed directive came out, he bought enough over-the-counter antibiotics and vaccines to last him for 10 to 15 years. He was stocked up. And he's not the only one, albeit the most extreme, who has done this. Cattle clients' independent nature may help them run their herds, but it doesn't help them with veterinary care. For years, I've been saying the average cattleman is 30 to 40 years behind the times. Well, they may only be 5 vet appointments behind the times. One last piece of information we teased from our records was the number of cattle calls each year. We noticed we had 158 cases in 2017, a year before our height of the overall highest percentage of cattle. And after that, our cases and percentage of cattle compared to the rest of the animals we saw both started dropping. Again, we attribute this to I was busy and cattle clients can't wait for an appointment. They think we as vets should drop everything to run out to their cow when they only call us every 5 to 7 years. I can't run a business like that. I can't invest in cattle facilities when I only gross, here's that number I said to remember, $34,000. The retired vet I was speaking about earlier and myself both knew most cattle people can't haul their animals. If by chance they could haul, would they likely need a vet for a down animal that couldn't be hauled? So we both agreed building facilities would not be a good idea to help the cattle clients. I can't hire another vet on that salary when vets are coming out of vet school asking for $100,000 or more. And no one is going to come into the area to run a cattle only practice unless the government gives them a handout. The money's just not there. There's not a lack of large animal vets, there's a lack of economy for them. Clients have to be educated and use a vet to have vets around. I know I'm not the only cattle practitioner who has faced these numbers and decided to take actions similar to mine. And the moonlighters I mentioned may stop practicing soon unless they want to pay more fees, as new laws in Kentucky require more permitting to complete farm calls. This means there will likely be a greater lack of large animal vets soon. My practice manager and I talked when we reviewed these numbers. We try to keep cattle services alive for the small percent that use our business and would use us regularly. But should we keep this up? The numbers really don't suggest that we should. So what is a community to do? It's going to try to fill the void for its needs, and I can't blame the community. But there are legal questions that have to be answered about who can fill that void. As a producer, you want to work with veterinarians for the best effects for your animals. What's the next step? Should the government come in and give handouts to the cattle producers? FDR used similar tactics in the Great Depression to stabilize the cattle economy. It's not unheard of. One of the institutions that tried to fill the void locally is the Agriculture Extension. They decided to build a facility for vets to work at. They were going to provide this handout to the local cattle industry and veterinarians with taxpayer dollars. This is what the rest of the episode will focus on. And in previous episodes, I have spoken about this sort of idea before, but more in a general sense. But now I was seeing it in action, and my thoughts were confirmed. So Ag Extension built facilities to work on large animals. Questions that immediately came to my mind were, I guess I can use these facilities. Would I charge less than a farm call to go to it? Excluding my fee, would the producer receive a fee from the facility? Is that economically sustainable? Would young vets who haven't invested in the community use this facility to get a leg up on my business? That would frustrate me if a young vet gets this handout if they just want to play being a large animal vet on the side. And if these young vets get a leg up from the government, why would the private sector want to keep investing in this industry? As you can see, cattle medicine doesn't generate money, and capitalism demands return on investment. On a side note, I was more worried about my horse clients, because as I will explain, Ag Extension had agreements with an equine vet to work at these facilities, and was having discussions for buying radiology equipment. I can't think of anything you would routinely need an x-ray for in ruminant medicine, so I could only think this was for the other vets to come into the region to work on horses or to potentially offer small animal work as I had seen other extension offices offer. I had for years worked to get stocks in a parking lot and radiology equipment for my horse clients, and I spent a lot of money doing that. And then the government just offered a building to distant horse vets without offering it to me. Again, it's hard to run a business when you are getting undercut by the government you are paying taxes to. This made me take a harsh look at cattle clients and cattle numbers. This complex would likely be the death blow for my clinic serving cattle. I mean, I guess I could see calves if they were hauled in, because I'm going to keep seeing goats because I like goats. And goats and cows basically use the same drugs. But anyway, one day my practice manager asked me, "Why are you doing it? Why are you keeping up cattle? Every year you discuss continuing it at the staff planning meetings, and no one can come up with good reasons to continue working on cattle. Yet you keep offering cattle services." In 2025, I kept it for two reasons. One, some sense of community, which, as my interactions with the Ag Extension will show, is only one sided. My community doesn't want me. And two, because I'm afraid of what Donald Trump is doing to our economy and wonder if I'll need to barter for food, or as things get bad, will cattle become a more valuable service? This was a very emotional response, to be sure, but a real concern in my mind. But is that emotional response really a good business model? Whether it is or not, I'm still holding on to cattle. We adapted again, and going into 2025, we dropped our active client rule, and now we'll do large animal farm calls with a price based on the number of animals we see. That's my bias. I was unnerved at this development of the ag complex, but decided to reach out to see if I could work with Extension at the complex. When in Rome. But then the complex shut down. The rest of this episode is here to explain what I've been able to glean of the story of why it shut down. As I mentioned, I do have bias that is coloring my interactions, and this is just from my perspective, as Ag Extension is not very communicative, even though I have reached out multiple times. I have had a number of clients ask me what I know about the complex, and I wanted to put out the information I have. For some of my clients, this is your tax dollars at work. For all of my clients, this is affecting how your animals are cared for. This story I have weaved together is from various threads of information. Public post by Ag Extension, conversations with Ag Extension agents on the phone, and emails, as well as open records request. I don't think I have the entire story, so maybe if you know more, you can let me know, because I'm honestly curious about this whole thing. It's very strange to me. So, here we go. Let's step back in time a few years. For some reason, I don't think Ag Extension and I get along, but I've never been sure why. I want to preface with, I'm not trying to put down this institution. I like that it is there and what its goal is. A government institution there to help grow people, farmers, and businesses, the community. If you teach a man to fish, he can feed himself, right? The goal of Extension is to make our people and our country stronger, and I share that goal. Let me tell you briefly about Ag Extension, and I'll have some links for you in the comments below that you can follow up on if you want more information. But the basic question to figure out Extension is, who funds them? The Extension Office is funded by us, tax-paying citizens. So the Extension offices work for the people, for the taxpayers. They try to provide services, grants, and loans that are helpful in educating and teaching people to be better at what they are doing. This helps people individually, but in the government's mind, successful people help the government by creating a better functioning society. So overall, it's a win-win for everyone. It's great that Extension does this. This is an example of our tax dollars at work. Sometimes I think we often forget the positive sides of how our tax dollars help us because programs like this are so ingrained in the community that we forget that this is actually a government organization that is working for us and has been for a long time. Our tax dollars make the roads, and that's what gets us around every day. Our tax dollars also support Extension, which actively tries to help us succeed at our goals. And I've used the University of Kentucky Diagnostic Lab a lot, which is, as far as I understand, part of Agriculture Extension, and get some funds through Ag Extension. The UK Veterinary Diagnostic Lab has always been helpful and thorough in educating me so I can in turn educate my clients. I have nothing but praise for the UK VDL. But when we get away from there, my experience with Extension has been mixed. When I was early in my career, I had an Extension agent ask me for some health certificates for his horses. We told him we needed a current Coggins. He refused to provide that and was upset with us when we would not write him a health certificate for travel, informing us he would travel without the health certificate or the lab test. I was rather disappointed. This is the person educating the community, and he was willing to break the law and put other people's animals at risk because he didn't want to run a lab test to show his horses were free of disease. I have mentioned in other episodes the next extension agent of that county, and I really never got off on the right foot. I had been teaching cattle producers to draw blood so they could send me blood for pregnancy tests for their animals. About the time I had many of my cattlemen trained to draw blood, the Extension Office, through grants, started offering that test for free. I felt rather undercut and never could find common goals with that agent. Another nearby agent, even though I reached out, seemed to want to have little to do with me. But all that was rather minimal. My practice grew, and I kept working on large animals, and the longer I practiced, the less competition I had as more vets left large animal medicine. I had one more interaction with my local extension where they were allowing a low-cost spay-neuter clinic to run rent-free in their offices. The clinic was not available for follow-up or regular care for these animals. I requested that if the low-cost clinic get to use government facilities for free and have a leg up for competing with local business, such as myself, that in exchange for use of the free facilities, the low-cost clinic be required to provide information about clinics for regular follow-up care and provide their clients with further education about ongoing expenses of owning animals. They responded that really they have nothing to do with it. For a fuller picture on this story, listen to Small Business No Day. While all this is going on, I remember talking with a client hearing that an extension agent was wanting to make a complex where large animals could be treated. I thought the idea intriguing and told the client who knew this ag agent to have them reach out to me as I thought I had some insight into the matter which could be beneficial in her plans. I don't know if the message ever reached the ag agent, but my views were pretty much it was a bad idea. Hauling animals, as I've discussed before, would likely not occur, plus my other concerns I've talked about. I wanted to let this ag agent know these potential pitfalls and concerns before investments were made. I can't remember exactly when that was, but it was about the time I learned the Kentucky state government has similar thoughts, so I completed a podcast episode, Obama Cow Care. That episode goes in more depth about this as there were groups in the Kentucky state government trying to come up with ways to help large animal medicine or the perceived lack of large animal vets. The summary of this was they had ideas of forming cooperatives amongst farmers for shared vet services. The summary of my concern was I didn't think people would haul to these centers and we would push out experienced vets who had invested their own money in facilities now competing with taxpayer-run facilities. I didn't hear much else about this for a good while, a few years. I didn't pay much attention to this, but I did note the Agriculture Extension Office purchased the old property of a veterinary clinic, Grants Lick Vet Hospital. This was the clinic I had started working at when I started my journey to become a veterinarian. 3 years after I graduated, in 2013, they sold their large animal portion of their practice to me and discontinued their large animal services. Then in 2019, they moved into a brand new small animal building. The extension office purchased their vacated land and started remodeling that land in December of 2024. I heard through the grapevine they were moving their main offices. Their current office was in the middle of a city. Hard to help agriculture producers from the middle of a city, is what I thought. So it made sense they were moving out to a more rural area. I watched the center grow and get remodeled. I drove past there all the time, and I didn't think much of it until a client asked me what I thought of the new veterinary complex going in up the road from me. They wondered if it would hurt my business. I wasn't too concerned because I was pretty sure it was just going to be a normal ag office. But I decided to have my practice manager call and get a little information. On June 25th, 2025, my practice manager spoke with Miss Michelle Simon, the Agriculture and Natural Resources Extension Agent for Campbell County. We were curious what would be going on in the facility so we could share this information with our clients. At that point, Miss Simon explained they were still working on details, but that the complex would be opening July 18th, with the idea that there were large animal stocks available for anyone to use, with horse stocks and scales soon to come. It would be free for Campbell County residents, where it was located, because it was funded by the county, and there would be a fee for anyone out of county. Vets would not be charged to use the facility, and there were no current arrangements set up with any vets other than an artificial insemination day set up for July 25th and 26th. She continued that the complex was not going to be subsidizing the cost of vet care other than providing a safe space for vets to work and get accurate weights. We agreed accurate weights would be a very good thing as we see lots of antibiotic resistance and liked the idea of preventing that problem from growing. We were interested in Miss Simon's response about antibiotic resistance. We couldn't tell over the phone if she was surprised we see so much resistance or not. I hoped future discussions would stress the importance of antibiotic resistance so she could stress it to her producers. I have to say, both my practice manager and I were a little concerned she may not have realized how real of a problem antibiotic resistance is. But that was just our fears of impressions. As follow-up to that conversation with Miss Simon, we sent an email to her and the Board of Veterinary Medicine. Recently, the board is updating its Practice Act, or the rules vets have to follow in Kentucky. One of which is vets must register to have a facility and or mobile facility permit. The facility permit allows vets to practice at a fixed location, i.e., even though I think it's double taxation since I already pay to operate a business in Kentucky, I was paying a fee to operate my brick and mortar clinic as well. If I wanted to offer farm calls at other locations, I needed a mobile permit. We had a few questions to clarify how the laws affected how we might work at this facility. I've highlighted some of the important ones. We hope this email would get everyone on the same page for communication. For those of us with mobile units, will that mobile unit registration cover seeing multiple clients at this facility since it's not a farm call to a client's private house farm property? This property is government owned since it's through the extension office. Would livestock weigh-ins typically held at fairgrounds for health certificates follow the same guidelines, or would that depend on the location? Is there a place for Miss Simon to look up and verify mobile vet registrations for veterinarians coming to her facility? Basically, although I disagreed with the underlying idea of this facility, I wasn't going to let it go to waste. I wanted to use it if I could, and I wanted to make sure I used it properly. My fear that vets from out of the area would come in to the Campbell County Ag Complex had been proven with precedent at other extension facilities, i.e., the low cost spay neuter clinic. And I didn't want them to outcompete me since they did not to have to invest in the facilities like I did with my building. The businessman in me wasn't going to miss out if I could work at this facility. So we followed up to this email with the board on July 15th, and they said legal had not had a chance to look it over. They didn't get back to us until September 3rd with answers to our questions, which were very helpful. Our biggest concern was that we weren't sure how government facilities were being handled because we saw in the Practice Act that the new mobile facility registration seemed to apply to private residences. The board is saying that as long as a mobile unit is equipped to handle what is being performed, then the work is fine. The big thing is that since the extension facility wouldn't have a fixed unit facility registration, that veterinarians who did not have a mobile facility registration couldn't work there without getting their mobile permit. The same would be true for vets doing work at weigh-ins or fairgrounds. They would need their mobile permit to be able to do that work. That made me feel a bit better. I just didn't like the idea of the government constructing an office for someone. So, even though all the vets had to do was get a mobile permit, I was glad that it limited some of my potential competition, or at least made them complete a few steps to be competition. While we were waiting to hear back from the Ag Extension about how they expected to work with vets, we found some other information. We found two articles which we saw had some misinformation in them. There was this article and a second article, which has on the extension site, which has since been taken down. We were a little concerned and decided to reach out to Miss Simon as well as other ag extension leaders because we were confused about these articles. We were aware Miss Simon knew of our existence and were not certain if her bosses did not or if extension in general did not know what veterinary services were available in the region. Either way, we were unhappy about the information being lacking and felt the extension should be aware and correct this information. Miss Simon was not correct when she was passing along information that the nearest vet clinic to her new ag complex was hours away. So I pointed out my clinic, according to Google Maps, is 6 minutes from this facility. We see horses, cattle, goats, sheep, pigs, and avians. We offer services at a clinic for these animals as well as farm calls. My clinic opened in 2010 and travels to Kenton, Campbell, Pendleton, and Bracken counties. I also point out Harrison Vet Clinic is 40 minutes away, Tri-County Vet Clinic is 52 minutes away, Wolf Equine Services 53 minutes away, and they all work on large animals. And while I do not speak for other clinics, I would appreciate that our ag extension agents be aware of what services are currently available, the problems we face, and let their producers know the options available to them versus exaggerating that services are not available. That was July 19th. We waited a few days but figured that these issues would be addressed and sent another email to Miss Simon asking for more information about her egg complex. While we did not like that the ag agents did not seem to be aware of vets in their region, they had made a complex for veterinarians, so we figured it would be best to be ready to use it. We sent another email to Miss Simon with some of the questions on how to use this facility. And these were questions like what are the hours of operation and how appointments are scheduled. So these were simple questions, right? Yet we didn't seem to be getting answers. We reached out again on July 29th. We thought this was weird. We understood before the official opening of the ag complex that they may not know how the facility would be used, but we thought by now these would be some simple questions to answer. It had been 5 days, and we were basically asking for hours of operation. At the same time, we had not heard anything back from the message we had sent asking for the extension agents to be aware of veterinary services in the region. We reached out again to them, wondering if we had contacted the wrong person since it had been 10 days and no response. We finally got a response from Extension saying they were gathering information and would get back with a more thorough response, but very much want to work with and support local veterinarians. Ah, at last, someone alive at the other end of the call. That felt good because we felt like we were talking into the void. So we were waiting until the next week. We were very confused, though, because we thought Miss Simon would get back to us with more information about use of the facility. We reached out to Miss Simon a few times and got no response. This was weird. We reached out again to that extension agent who had responded to us and on August 7th asked for clarification if Miss Simon was the person running the project because we were attempting to get basic information about the complex. At this point, I was doubting the government's ability to operate a facility of medicine. Clients would not tolerate this response time. All the same, a response did come. But no response has ever come from Miss Simon. She had stopped talking or responding to us, and as of this recording, has remained silent. We guess she didn't want to work with us as full-heartedly as the rest of Ag Extension. Dr. Glaza, I am reaching out on behalf of the University of Kentucky. UK's extension mission is to support learning and education, not provide clinical services or veterinary care. Oh, my staff and I were shocked. This complex was not intended to be used for veterinary services. I guess I was right with my original thought they were just using this to expand outward and have more education areas. We guessed Miss Simon was just not in the loop about the process, probably not her project, and she was just speaking out of turn. After all, she hadn't gotten back to us answering very simple questions. We considered the matter done. Even though I mentioned it above, we wondered what the board would say because we were curious with the wording of the Practice Act if legally we could work at the government facilities. But whatever, they did answer us, and that was a problem for another day. Life goes on. But of course, it gets more interesting, because then there was a twist. Someone presented an article to me. Campbell County A&R agent builds agricultural complex, authored by none other than Michelle Simon, and published somewhere around July 1st, as best as we can tell. This was after our original conversation in June that my practice manager had, where Miss Simon stated no vets had signed up to work at the Ag Complex. I have saved the original article's online format, but will say Ag Extension has since taken this article down. I won't read the entire article, but I wanted to make some points because I saw some inaccuracies with the article. If you all want, I can post the article on the Patreon, just let me know. But this article changed the shape of the conversations I was having with Ag Extension. I obtained records from board meetings about this project, and this article jives with what was being said at board meetings. Before, I thought people were just slow and ill-informed. Now, well, judge for yourself. So here, I've got some of the inaccuracies numbered. 1. The article states Campbell County has not had a large animal vet since 2013. While technically true, I have been serving Campbell County and so have others. 2. The article insinuated that Grants Lick Vet Hospital had not used their building since 2013. I don't know why, because even though I purchased their large animal portion of the clinic, they still operated a small animal facility in that building for 6 more years before they moved into a new building. Number 3, they falsely claimed my business stopped seeing large animals 5 years ago. Number 4, they falsely claimed I stopped the majority of farm visits. Number 5, they claimed I required clients to haul livestock. Again, false. We did start requiring sick calves and ruminants under 100 pounds to be hauled in, but we still go out for individual cows and herds. I actually don't try to treat anything larger than 100 pounds on a trailer. Number 6, they claim I only have horse stocks and no other livestock handling equipment, but I see sick sheep and goat all the time at my office. This is just absurd that Extension would be saying this about a private business. Our government hard at work. Number 7, Miss Simon goes on to claim the number of beginner farmers in Campbell County and northern Kentucky is increasing. I would really like to see her data on this because I see my large animal clientele shrinking. And the data from the Campbell County Agricultural Development Council in 2020 also agrees with me. And then the census also showed in 2022 the average age of cattle farmers was 58, and in Campbell County only 79 producers said farming was their primary occupation. Number 8, the article falsely claims Campbell County has limited to no access to large animal vets. I'm 6 minutes south of the facility they built, and I know other vets who serve Campbell County for large animals. A quick rant here. She goes on saying farmers have no way to get a prescription for antibiotics to use for sick livestock, medicated mineral to prevent anaplasmosis, or a simple scours medication to prevent young calf death. As I have stated and proven to Ag Extension, this is false. The bigger issue that needs discussed is farmers feel they have no way because they just want to pick up drugs. They don't want exams or to maintain VCPRs. They just want to think they need something and then be able to get it. Those practices are what leads to antibiotic resistance and improper treatments. We need diagnosis made by trained professionals for these animals. Number 9, Miss Simon again makes a statement that farmers are required to haul their livestock over an hour away, and that's just not true. There are multiple vets, including myself, that will come to Campbell County, and multiple places they can haul within an hour's time. Number 10, Ms. Simon states they understand the importance of keeping good relations with local business. Well, I would like to say she doesn't. Okay, and then this gets very interesting to me. Currently, 5 vets have agreed to practice out of the facility. Wait a second. Did you get these 5 vets since our original conversations, or did you lie to us? Dr. Stanfield from Maysville, Dr. Fromey from Union. Dr. Fromey, I think, only works on horses. Hence my concern about this facility trying to open a horse business. And as they were looking at getting radiology equipment. And then Dr. Huck from Cynthiana, Dr. Luke Trapp in Wisconsin. What the crap? You'd rather get someone from Wisconsin than 6 minutes away? And Dr. Prather from Florence. And the A&R agent is reaching out to others to provide a personal invitation to come and work out of the facility. This approach eliminates the issue of showing bias or favoritism to anyone. Well, I can't even finish that sentence. How does that not show favoritism? Okay, hold on. Farmers have been encouraged to invite their vets to come and practice at the facility and have been requested to send suggestions of vets so invitations can be made to everyone. Miss Simon did not invite us when we called to ask what was going on and said no one had made any commitments. Michelle Simon, the Campbell County A&R agent, single-handedly. Oh, apparently she should know a lot about the project. I wonder why she couldn't and hasn't answered our questions. The article then points out how the facility was purchased with Campbell County tax dollars. Well, that's just something. I wasn't really sure exactly what to feel. I will admit, I thought about stopping my cattle medicine. It seemed the community did not want me. This seemed like a very personal attack against my business, and I couldn't understand why. I don't think I could pick Miss Simon out of a lineup. Why did she lie to us about vets agreeing to work there? Why did she ignore us? Why did she think we weren't doing large animal medicine? Was that partially why our numbers had been dropping? How many clients had she told not to call us because we weren't doing large animal medicine? What had we done to her? It hurt, as I have been trying to help my clients and the large animal clientele of the region for 15 years. Every year, when making business decisions, I toiled over how to help them when they seemed to want to do nothing to help themselves. I had responsibilities to my family and my employees as well as the large animal clients. And I also had to look at the longevity of the business. I didn't want my business to be there for 5 years. I wanted it to become a generational business to support the needs of the community for years to come. My guess is I hadn't offended her personally, but my business decision to try to help cattle medicine survive may have ostracized cattle clients who wanted to use a veterinarian like a Walmart shopping aisle to pick up drugs. So I did respond to this article. I demanded they take down such inaccurate articles, which Extension did quickly, to their credit. I also asked them to publicly correct their inaccuracies. As of recording this, they have not done this, even though I have asked multiple times. I began to doubt their urge to work with local veterinarians or business. They responded stating, "The space will not be used as a veterinary clinic." My practice manager also discussed the situation with the ag agent who had been communicating with us, and that ag agent was very apologetic. While I was happy the space wouldn't be used as space to compete against my business, I had never asked for them to not use the space as such. I was curious what that meant for all they had invested, but again, not my problem. Things started settling out a little bit. I felt wrong, but it seemed like steps were being taken to correct the wrong. My practice manager and I started reviewing numbers of our practice with large animal medicine, and as the dust settled, we wanted a little more information to make sure our clinic was not being libeled against, and where it was, statements made to correct. We received this response. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. The success story has been removed. It does not meet our standards. Extension's role is education. Any services taking place must be connected to an educational program. The initial description of use of the space as a veterinary clinic does not align with our educational mission, and the space will not be used as a veterinary clinic. We had some phone conversations and followed up with an email. We thanked them for taking down the article, happy that the complex will be used for educational purposes, but I did ask for a meeting to accomplish a few goals. I want to make sure people were informed correctly about my practice, and I want to make sure the public was informed correctly about my practice. And I want to make sure going forward, correct information will go out and know how Extension is planning on working with local veterinarians. I wanted to meet with them and basically give them the first part of this episode where I talk about the problems veterinarians and local cattle clients are having, just so they can know about my pitfalls and successes, and perhaps maybe working together we could come up with a better answer to how to help people. They responded that they had nothing further to communicate with us. Apparently, they don't want to meet with me nor work with local veterinarians. I had two goals with the meeting. One, explain to them what I see as a veterinarian who has worked in the region for 15 years, and two, to make sure everyone who received incorrect information received correct information. They will not meet with me to make sure that either of those two goals are achieved. To be completely fair, Ag Extension did take down the incorrect information. But as they have ceased conversing with me, I don't know that they have done anything else. Have all the leaders of the community been informed about the incorrect information? There were many state and local representatives at the grand opening of the building. Are those representatives under the impression there is no vet for hours to service large animals? Are they under the impression this facility, where over $500,000 tax dollars were poured into, is operational? Is that information guiding these representatives as they vote on allowing a new veterinary school in the state? As a citizen of Campbell County listening to this, do you think your government agencies have spent your money wisely? Do you think they are working well with private business to provide services to your animals? If you are listening and not a local and have been wondering about the lack of large animal services, have you reached out to your extension to see if they are working with your veterinarians? If you are a veterinarian, is your local extension supportive of you? I'm putting this story out here for a few reasons. One, just as always on Vet Talk, I want to help you understand more about how animals relate to the world. I hope this gives you a look at my practice and how we have tried to work with clients to provide services over the years, and why you may not be seeing large animal vets near you. The industry focuses so much on the number of vets and not on making sure vets have a viable market to come practice in. It's not that there is a lack of vets, it's that there is a lack of people wanting our services. I'm sure there are some personal conflicts that have brought about my part in this story. When my clinic is called out and blatantly lied about, there has to be, right? When a government works with other businesses but seems to actively exclude my own, it must be something personal, but I just don't know what it is. Is it Miss Simon upset with me? I couldn't pick her out of a lineup, and once I did see her, looked back, and I think I met her once or twice in my entire life, if that. I couldn't remember offending her. Did I offend someone else at Extension? Or is it I offended the cattle community by not being able to meet their wants while maintaining the needs of my business and the law? When we explain our protocols, we have had many upset cattle clients, some hostilely so. I'm here trying to provide solutions to problems, and I know those aren't the solutions the cattle community may want. But I'm here when others aren't, at least for now, trying. It just doesn't seem that people want to work with me. For everyone else out there, take this information and look into your local governments. Is the government working how you want them to? This is your tax dollars. Ask questions of your officials. They work for you. What do I want out of this episode? I want the full story. I like stories, and I like knowing details. I need the full story, but I'm just an outdoor vet people seem to stop talking with. I just know as I keep working hard to find a sustainable business, which for the moment includes cattle, it gets harder, and it seems the government is another entity I am working against. How much damage has Ag Extension's incorrect information done to myself and other local veterinarians? I want to make sure people know the full story and that it isn't just forgotten. If you are a vet experiencing the same problems as I have, I want you to know there may be more forces working against you than you realize. I want people to start working together, and I want people to start taking responsibility for the world we live in. We can't make the world a better place just by ourselves. We have to work hard to understand the needs of clients, animals, and producers. I think this story is an example where no one talked to each other, and some actively lied or were too incompetent to research to have accurate information to achieve goals. All the same, hopefully this episode will bring some answers to me and inform others. I'm Dr. Nathan. Thanks for listening. I hope our discussions are valuable to you and aid in giving you perspective. If you want to contact us, please reach out to theveterinarypodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe to and like our YouTube channel and share with others. For more information, please join the Patreon at patreon.com/theveterinarypodcast. Membership is free and you can decide what other information you may want to purchase to support our work. Thanks for listening, and I hope this perspective can help us improve the world.